Right now, we're just walking through the commissioning of all three systems. First one was done in April 2015. These are pictures taken by a woman from the Smithsonian who's spent maybe 6 or 10 years, I guess, touring the world taking pictures of air traffic control towers. There's an exhibit at the Smithsonian, so as part of her circuit, she went to Sweden, took a picture of the tower and the air traffic control system, and that became one of the exhibit panels at the Smithsonian this past year. But the takeaway here that's of interest is that in going through the process, LAV was able to convince the regulator, if you will, that they can provide radar air traffic control services remotely in accordance with their air traffic control handbook. So this ICAO document is analogous to what the FAA calls their 7110.65. It's basically the controller handbook. It tells them how they shall do their job. I won't drill down, but this just shows you the remotely controlled airport and some of the features in the remote tower center. A pair of microphones up on the top that provide audio feedback. Pan-tilt zoom cameras. We have 2 of them up top. One is infrared, one is optical. So the controller can, for night operations, for example, check an aircraft's gear if it's down by zooming in or with that thermal infrared camera. Provides better visibility at nighttime and foggy conditions. This is what we call a crow's nest. It's about 5 foot diameter, 8 feet tall, weighs maybe 500 pounds. Inside of that are 14 high-def cameras that are behind each of the windows, and it's a pressurized enclosure, so that keeps the elements out, keeps the birds and bugs out, dust. It's heated and air conditioned for various environmental conditions. And then up top you see 2 cameras, each one with a signal light gun slave to it, so should an aircraft controller, pilot loses communications, loses radio, the tower can still locate that aircraft with a zoom camera and flash the light gun to provide a clearance as needed. We talked about the microphones. What is very unique about this is the air blade system. So that pressurized system also creates an air knife, air blade in front of each of the windows, so that does an effective job of sweeping away any of the elements. So if rain were to accumulate on the windows during a driven rainstorm, the air blade acts as a squeegee to keep the windows clean. Cameras aren't new to airports. They're used throughout the U.S. in various locations in big and small airports, but airport operators typically and controllers are never very happy with them because they don't last long. They have reliability challenges. In testing in Europe, we've run 2 sites now for about 3 years without having a camera fail, so we attribute that to that environmental housing as doing its job. The remote tower center, in cases in Europe, we have electronic flight strips and radar data that's also presented to the controller. Here in Leesburg, we just have the weather overlay, for example, the ability to put the AWAS information in front of the controller in his out the window view. We also have the ability to remotely control airfield lighting, monitor the nav aid status, and then there's a typical traditional voice switch. So the things in yellow are what you would ultimately see at Leesburg. Electronic flight strips are slowly making their way into the NAS through an FAA program that was recently awarded. So why would you do this? Really, it's to expand services to non-towered airports. That's our primary objective. There are many other airports like Leesburg that are keeping a close eye on what's going on here because they have similar economic drivers. They might be near Chicago, near Atlanta, non-towered airports with a lot of biz jets, a lot of flight schools. Very similar issues and concerns there that Scott and the airport community faces here. Staffing challenges. The controllers union has talked to us about this challenge. Getting controllers who want to live in Vail or live in Nantucket. It's not always affordable for controllers. So someday down the road, one might imagine the FAA remoting some of their towers just to alleviate that challenge. Extending service hours. So in the case of Ireland, we'll have 2 airports, Cork and Shannon, and the service provider there, the Irish Aviation Authority, wants to remote their midnight operation back to Dublin. So the idea is that they won't have 1 or 2 controllers at these locations handling 6 airplanes between midnight and 6 a.m. So they want to bring them back, and that's their concept that we're in the middle of testing right now. So the primary benefit Scott talked to is really the initial capital cost and the O&M cost are significantly lower for putting up a structure like this. There's also a very abbreviated schedule for fielding the equipment. So it took us maybe a total of 5 months to get a design done and deploy the cameras here at Leesburg, as opposed to maybe 2 to 3 years that it might take to build a brick and mortar system. And then finally, you have such a smaller footprint, and you don't have the environmental challenges. You can locate it almost anywhere in the airfield versus putting up a building with an elevator and everything else. I won't drill down to this, but there are, beyond that basic benefit, there are a number of other electronic features that the controllers find very useful. Video overlay, so we can highlight the runway and taxiway such that in a low visibility situation, the controller's got somewhere to look to at least know if that aircraft's reporting holding short on 17, but it's fogged in. At least he knows where to look and potentially point the infrared camera to see if that aircraft is where he says he is. The recording of video is another important aspect for investigating incidents. All air traffic control systems have 45 days of audio recording, and all the data that a tower is captured. Having the video to go along with that is a powerful tool when it comes to the unfortunate time when you need to investigate an event. FOD scan mode's another interesting feature, so the controller can hit a button and the zoom camera will just pan the runway in infrared or optical to allow the controller to confirm there's no obvious debris that's on the runway. It's something they do today with binoculars. So that's kind of it. And the bottom one, really, the remote operation option is, at the end of the day, gives you a little bit even stronger economic story when you start thinking about, I've got 2 or 3 non-towered airports in a particular region. Maybe if I consolidate operations, those 3 communities can more effectively afford the services that are provided by those controllers. So that brings us to why we're here, the launch projects. I think Scott talked about what he and the airport are interested in. And our strategy we established early on was to set up the demo system here and working with the FAA get certification for what we call basic VFR tower services. So that's primarily the services you as pilots receive from a Class Delta VFR tower. So I don't know if that term is familiar to many people, but the FAA uses the term VFR tower kind of quite often to describe what you see at a Class Delta tower. Fundamentally, that means you do not get separation services from the controller, but they provide sequencing to the runway, and they control the movement area and provide clearances to take off and to land. And Sean will go through that in more detail. So the partnership, I think Scott touched on it very nicely, but it really was a alignment of stars when SAAB came across VSATs, who was working at Leesburg Airport to try to figure out how to help deal with some of the challenges here. And we showed up with this shiny object and were able to get VSATs to partner with SAAB Census. So I do want to indicate or emphasize here, this is really a non-Fed initiative. So we in the state of Virginia through VSATs went to the FAA and said we want to take this technology to Leesburg and get through a certification program. And the FAA has no interest in funding it necessarily, but they clearly provided significant in-kind support and continue to support us. So we're all very happy with that, and the controllers they brought last summer to help us test it. So it's been working out well, and the controllers union as well, NATCA, has been supportive from day one. Their president, Paul Rinaldi, spent a couple hours here last summer, and he's been very energized and speaks highly about the concept for airports. He thinks it's a benefit to the mass as well. So I'll end on that note, I guess. Any questions that come up?
I have a question. Can you define the data the FAA will be evaluating to determine whether or not it's
Yeah, that's been a challenging question from day one. And what it's evolved to now, the question is, what data is the FAA using to evaluate the safety of the system? Because it's a visual challenge, there's really not a lot of hard metrics, qualitative data, quantitative data you can bring to a safety panel. So what they've asked us to do, and that's the phases we're into right now, is we spent 4 or 5 months last summer collecting data, controller observations, and used surveys to kind of get qualitative feedback from the controllers. We use that to then beef up the system, if you will, by bringing in some other features to address some of the issues controllers raised. So now we're at the point where the FAA said, I want you to do use a talk aloud technique that they use when they evaluate controllers that are in training. So apparently when controllers run through a training program, the FAA has the controllers talk aloud their thought process. So as they're monitoring traffic and they're clearing aircraft to land and a truck runs out on the runway, they talk aloud what they would be doing and thinking, how they're thinking about it, what actions they would take. So the FAA's used this technique for quite a while to evaluate controllers. They're applying that here to the RVA controllers, and they will have them be evaluated as they talk aloud various scenarios that we're flying. So we're going to be using target of opportunity data as you guys fly throughout the system when we're here. These controllers from RVA will be talking aloud their mental process, and then we'll fly some specific scenarios just to kind of create events that are normal but maybe less frequent, so things that we might want to evaluate. So the idea is that they will use this data that's collected with FAA observers and sheets that are filled out and go back to the safety panel to evaluate, hey, does this system have enough, are there any insurmountable challenges, safety risks going forward? If not, we're going to let you go to the next phase next year, where for 3 months we would be providing services from the R tower with the mobile towers as safety net. So I think the evaluation in that phase next year is a little bit fuzzy still, but at the end of the day, I think it's going to it'll still involve the same type of testing where they will be, in effect, evaluate how effective those controllers are at doing their job. So we're using some OJT forms on the job training forms that controllers are scored against when they go to a new facility. We're using a lot of the same tools that controllers are measured against for training and for commissioning a tower, for example. So, did that answer your question?
I was curious, is there anything that we can do as pilots, other than listen to what we're told to do? Is there anything else we can do to a sort of effect?
That's a good question. And game the system a little bit? Nothing comes to mind, but I think the biggest, one of the biggest risks that we all recognize, forget the R tower, just putting a mobile tower here. The minute we flip the switch on October 11th, there's a number of you, I'm sure, that are used to this being non-towered. Now you've got to, don't call out traffic like you normally would. You're going to be listening for clearances and listening to the tower and talking to the tower. So that's probably the biggest thing we can ask of you, is that just keep it in the back of your mind that during these scheduled hours, this thing is no longer uncontrolled. You shouldn't, in theory, well, it'll change your operation because now it's a control tower. Yes, sir.
You didn't mention, although it was in one of the slides, you didn't mention radar or ADS-B. Are they part of how you see what's going on?
In the end state, the question is, do we see radar and ADS-B fitting into this equation? And the answer is yes, at some point we do. Kind of as a data point, there are somewhere around 350 of these VFR towers in the U.S. Maybe 190 or 100 are FAA towers, and those all have radar displays. The contract tower airports, the 260 that are left, maybe a third have radar displays. Part of the reason you don't see them in all towers is because of the cost and the challenges of getting an FAA radar feed. So earlier on, we wanted to bring an FAA feed into the system, and because of the hurdles and the time and the cost it would take, we said, let's stand back and evaluate how well this works with controllers with no radar display. So in a sense, the controllers are, they've got one hand tied behind their back already out of the gate because they don't have a radar display. What's interesting is the FAA controllers that have come in all had radar displays in their facilities, but RVA's controllers, many of their guys coming in are used to working facilities without a radar scope. But I think at the end of the day, that's ultimately a smart thing to do, and it'll become an added safety feature. So I could see us, once we get through the commissioning and this becomes operational, that would be a next step. And same thing with ADS-B. We could bring ADS-B in today probably with a receiver, but we're sort of staying out of that for now. Yes, sir?
Sir, I'm confused with the term VFR tower. Obviously, we have IFR operations now. That will continue to be IFR operations as usual.
Correct. And the question is, will VFR tower label change the way it's operated? And it won't. And we run into this confusion all the time when we use the term. And even at headquarters, and I don't know how it evolved. It's in some FAA documents. You don't see it used internationally, but I think it kind of came about, I'm guessing, because the towers are visual, so controllers are using eyeballs and binoculars and no radar, and they aren't separating traffic.
The IFR guy coming
Yep.
in for 1.7, it's going to have to be an eyeball separation from VFR traffic, or I guess in my knowledge of what we see.
If it's IMC, if it's yeah, if
let's
it's,
say 1,003.
yeah, the tower will still sequence that IFR flight with any VFR traffic in the pattern. They will still sequence that
I
traffic
only
in.
have to receive, right? Because we don't know where he is to receive.
If he doesn't, yeah, correct. I mean, if he doesn't see him in it, but if it's still VFR conditions.
We're going to see one of them, right?
Yep.
If the IFR is coming in from landing 17, he may be at a distance that we don't see him yet, but we will have the one that's in the pattern in sight. So we can make adjustments to, we've got some pretty good landmarks out there on the ridge line already. That's what we've been working on for the past week or so with the controllers. So we're seeing about good 4 miles out right now. And as we go forward, I think we'll get a little bit further.
And it'll still be one in, one out IFR. One benefit of the tower, once that IFR lands, the tower can relay your downtime, which will then allow Potomac to send the next one in, or release somebody for departure. Right?
And we'll actually be able to accept 2 IFR arrivals at the same time if there are visual approaches following each other. We can accept that from Potomac. It will be. It's in the agreement that we have with them. We can do the same thing with departures going out. If the pilots are willing to maintain visual with each other, Potomac can give us releases on both, and both go.
Yes, sir. Luke?
Is there any weather observation capability?
Yeah, any weather observation capability? Yep. Yeah, that is the only requirement we're aware of, that if, the way I understand it, is if the AWAS, the weather sensors reporting visibility less than 4 miles, the tower controllers are required to provide tower visibility readings. So if upstairs in the camera system, we've identified water towers and communication cell towers that are anywhere from 3.5 miles on in around the airport. And they're highlighted out the window. The controller can pull up a box that shows here's a communications tower 2.5 miles out northeast of here. So under those conditions, the controllers upstairs will use those visible or not visible references to report tower visibility.
Will they change the AWAS then themselves, or is that, I mean, usually it's on AWAS, you know, the power
Yep.
scope.
Yeah, we will not have an ATIS.
We won't be making changes. We'll be reporting it in. Right, we'll report it into to Scott and let him know. We've got markers 5 miles. So we've got 5, 4, we've got 2 down, a 2-mile marker down this way. So we've got a pretty good selection of markers that we can use right now to make determinations that we're going below 3 miles.
Does the tower report winds in real time too?
We do have a weather system associated with the tower. You'll see 4 masts up on the trailer, 3, or I guess it's actually 5, 4 frequencies, and 1 is the weather. It gives us wind, altimeter, humidity, stuff like that. And there's a little bit of difference because your weather is coming from down the north side of the field. So there's a slight difference.
So when they're Potomac, under IFR conditions, IMC conditions, it's clear by Potomac, ILS, and EPS 7, who's watching the airplane down the ILS?
Potomac is still responsible for.
Are we talking to Potomac, or are we talking?
We have in an agreement with Potomac. They're going to switch you to us somewhere between 5 and 15 miles. Frequency to the tower, to the mobile tower, you'll get switched from Potomac to the mobile tower somewhere between 5 and 15 miles.
Who's watching IMC?
While you're IMC, Potomac will still be monitoring your flight down.
But what I'm talking about,
No, you'll be talking to us.
so if they see a conflict, they're gonna let you know.
Absolutely. We've got a direct shout line to Potomac that they would contact us and we would relay the information to you.
So that's gonna create a
Yeah, I mean, it could, but Potomac will also switch you to Unicom on an IFR clearance into the airport, once they put you on the approach.
Okay, wait till you're established.
Right, yeah, right and cleared, and then they can switch you to Unicom.
What I'd like to do now is walk through some of the details about how this will be implemented. And I think that may answer a lot of the questions that you have now, if we can do that. So these are the subjects that we're going to try to touch on with Sean and his expertise from the controller's perspective. And we'll try to touch on each of these as we go through. Okay, to start this process, we have to establish the Leesburg Airport Traffic Area. And that's where we get the designation of a VFR tower, Class D services. Think about what you get at Martinsburg, what you get at Frederick. Same kind of process. And when it is in effect by the NOTAM, that's when we have those services. When the tower's not in operation, it goes back to good old Leesburg again. So there is no Class D airspace. You're not going to see the dotted lines on the charts. We don't have Class D airspace here. And kind of the bottom line, all aircraft must comply with the communications with control tower FAR elements. Yes?
Very confusing. I think what you're trying to say is it's not charter, but in terms of the requirements, we need to treat the area as it is Class D airspace, right?
Yes. But you will not see anything on the charts.
So there is Class D airspace.
Okay, so what is this traffic area? It's everything outside of the Bravo, 1499 and below, and within 4 nautical miles. I have a map on the next page. And again, effective during the times shown on the NOTAMs. So that's a 4 nautical mile ring around Leesburg. Now, don't get nervous. We have not pulled a coup and taken over Bravo at Dulles. So anything that's B does not include what these guys are working. But as you can see, before you hit this area, you have to have talked to the tower, get your clearance to land. So think about where you might want to start calling ahead of time, especially on a busy day, right? Saturday, Friday afternoon, Round Hill, Purcellville, coming up from Upperville. A little analogous to what we started to talk about a number of years ago when the SFRA was instantiated about when to get your transponder code plugged in and make sure you're all set with that.
Are you still swapping 12.6?
VFR operations, yes. Yes, we'll touch on that as well. Okay, so you want to tag team this?
Sure. You'll have movement areas now. Won't be under the taxiway without contacting ground control. We'll have ground and local in the tower. Myself, so there'll be 3 of us and 3 controllers and myself. So someone will be on, we'll rotate through the positions. 27.5 for local, 20.5 for ground control. The transponder, everything that you're doing today with your transponder is going to stay the same. There'll be another, oh, I thought it was another one? How about now?
There you go.
All right, thanks. Sorry. So everything you're doing today with your transponder is going to remain the same. There'll be another NOTAM put out on the 3rd by the NCRCC, just identifying that the tower's in place. We want you to report where you normally report in from when you're coming back from the maneuver area. We may alter that slightly if you, instead of entering the downwind, maybe you're going to enter the base. You know, make it more efficient for you, or it'll help the flow of traffic that's already at the airport. So we're optimistic. The opposite direction stuff, I hope we put a stop to that. I think we're capable of doing that. We're going to select the runway that's most aligned with the wind, unless it's a calm runway, then we'll go with the calm runway that you have here. We're going to start out staying with the left traffic that you have today, but there may be times that we don't want you in left traffic. You may need to be in right traffic. So we will do that based on what the need is at the airport at the time. The IFR arrivals, like I said, we can possibly have 2 IFR arrivals simultaneously. You know, one behind the other, following visually. Potomac has agreed to this in the letter of agreement. We can launch 2 departures the same way, visual on each other. I think one thing that it doesn't appear, the jets, we are anticipating that you're going to be ready at the end of the runway, ready to go. We're going to be working on the release based on that you're going to be ready. So if you start out from here and you're not ready, it would be helpful if you would tell us right away, so we won't work on the release. We have a good relationship with Potomac. They've been very supportive of the project. I'm not anticipating any areas that we're going to increase delay. I think we will We've seen some 30-minute delays out here in the last couple of days trying to depart 17. I'm very optimistic that we can resolve those. Going to New York, maybe not, but if it's just because of the traffic at Dulles, I think with us being here, possibly ensuring that the turn's going to be made on time or a little bit before, they're more likely to let you out. So I'm really optimistic that we'll have a good relationship with Potomac, and that's going to relate to more efficiency for the airport.
The last bullet talks about the special flight rules area and our Leesburg maneuvering area. Those elements aren't going to change. You still need 1226 going in and out if you're VFR. We'll talk about SFRA transit, that's all the same. So not much is changing in regard to the SFRA rules.
All right, here Scott's had lines put down, so we will have movement area, non-movement areas. Vehicles are going to have radios. We'll contact ground control as well.
Advisories and sequencing.
Where is the movement area? Are those going to be marked?
They're marked now.
They're marked now.
Yes.
Are you going to need each of the ramps so you know where we're going from?
Well, we're going basically what we're hearing from you now. You know, when someone says north, south, stuff like that.
North ramp, south ramp,
Mhm.
north hangar.
Yeah, south end. That's what we're hearing today. We're monitoring the frequencies now, the CTAP now. We'll have CTAP in the tower as well in the event that you would forget, maybe forget and be on the frequency. Yeah, the one thing we're likely to look for is once you exit the runway, we want to keep you moving, you know, for the next guide.
So how about the taxiway names? I just know.
The intersections, no, they're not going to have names. We didn't have sufficient time to get that done, and with us just being here for 30 days right now, so we're just going to get you off the taxiway, get you moving north or south, and get you to your parking.
Just call first or second turn off.
Yeah, we're likely to say make your next available left-hand turn if you're landing south, and if we've chosen the wrong one for you because of your speed or whatever, we're hoping you'll give us feedback. No, I can't. I got to go to the second one, something like that. But we'll work together on that. I don't see us having too much of a hard time with it.
Or if you're landing south and he says make a right, tell him my name.
Yeah, that might that would be a problem.
How about
So-
the pattern operation?
Hang on a second, please. To your point about the movement area, Scott has marked those on the taxiways. They're primarily running parallel to the runway. This ramp is all non-movement. On that side, it's movement. So keep an eye out for those. Instructors in the audience, instruct your customers and your students to look for these because we can't afford to have incursions occurring with that. So they're marked, they're freshly painted, they're fairly visible.
So is there a line between the taxiway and the runway, or does it include the taxiway?
From the ramps, including the condo hangars and the other hangars, and the taxiway.
So the taxiway is in movement area?
Yes, it is. It's controlled. And that's what this little chart shows. You can go from the broken areas this way, but you can't go this way without permission.
Is there a ground control frequency, or?
Yes, we'll get to that.
120.5.
Okay,
The VFR pattern question?
Pattern operation.
okay, we have a chart on that, stand by. Let's talk about clearance.
Right. When we open in the morning, we notify Potomac and give them direction of operations, whatever might be affecting the airport. At that time, they're going to turn off their 1855, and we'll have it keyed in the tower. We don't have a printer, but as it prints for Potomac, they'll, via the shout line, give us a yell. November 1234 is going to Columbia. Code is 5624. Direct still or the Potomac departure, whatever they want you on, and then we will relay that to you when you call for your clearance. We don't have the ability to put flight plans in. We won't be able to, if you call us and say, hey, can you extend them, we can call Potomac and get that done. But we typically don't monitor, if you're coming up on 2 hours and we haven't heard from you, we're not likely to extend that flight plan because it creates a little bit of a backlog within the people trying to get codes. So, but if you notify us, say, hey, I need a few more minutes or an hour or whatever, we'll get your time updated and you'll be good.
Can we get our clearance from you?
You will, once we open, you'll be using the same frequency, 1855, but you'll be talking to someone in the mobile tower.
SFRA flights, as usual. File your SFRA plan through your favorite filing method, and then pick up your code from the guys here in the tower. It's going to be 1855, your standard code pickup point.
When we land, it would be for a pattern, do we still have to call?
Yes, and we'll get to that. I have a whole chart on that. Ground control.
Right, ground control is going to work for the movements. The trucks are going to have radios as well, so we'll be in communication with them. Whatever you need, we're here to provide a service. If you want to go down to the block and run the engine, whatever, it doesn't matter. Just give ground control a call. We'll get you moving in that direction. Ground is going to be pretty straightforward. You have one taxiway. That's it. You're coming out of the ramp, you hit the taxiway. So he'll either point you north or south, depending on the direction that we're running at the time, and that's it. Local control is going to exit you off the runway. You may hear something to contact ground. If while you're taxiing, you say, you know, I'm going right into the main terminal area, local may taxi you right into the main terminal area, and you won't even have to contact ground control. So it just depends on where you land, where you're going to park, as to when you get switched over to ground control.
You want a ground call from the parking area?
Yes.
Soon as we light up and begin to move
As soon as you start, before you hit that yellow line out there, we want to hear from you.
Right. And on landing, you land, he's asked you to make the next left turn, right turn appropriate to your direction of landing, cross the hold line and hold.
Right.
You got to talk to them and figure out
Right.
what's next.
Local control will issue the ground frequency to switch to ground. Like I said, the times that you catch the midfield terminal taxiway and you want to come in the terminal, they may just taxi you right in. You won't even have to contact ground.
Some towers want the IFR traffic to like traffic on the IFR. You want that as well, or?
We'll know by giving you your clearance that you're IFR vehicle.
Is there a separate frequency for ground?
Yes,
Yes.
120.5. Ground will be working ground and monitoring the clearance delivery frequency.
Frequencies are going to be published.
Okay.
One question
Yeah.
on FAA was violations in NASA form.
There can be violations, yes.
That's what I'm asking.
Would there be violations of...
Violations, and do we fill out the NASA? Not me. Do you fill out the NASA? I've been in this too long.
Yes, there could be violations.
Okay.
As you mentioned, I assume you're not a flow traffic, SFRA, so it goes out with the dead,
Correct.
so it's all phone call.
Still a phone call, yes.
So, follow on the gentleman's question over there.
What was that? Is that pattern work only? What are you talking about?
Well, normally you call the den when you're down and from the pattern.
What's the den?
We'll get to that in a
Okay.
second. Stand by on that. Stand by one. This is just a summary of the local functions that Sean and his guys are going to be providing.
We're going to follow, like I said, left traffic, we're going to utilize left traffic to the maximum extent we can. Pattern gets full, or there's an advantage to use the right traffic, we're going to use right traffic. If there's an advantage to full stop taxi back, we're going to utilize that.
Operation of the lights during operational hours will be done by the tower. So they'll be doing the key up on that.
Right, will key up
Yeah.
through CTAC.
I assume that we did keep it less than the tower.
No,
No.
you still have CTAC capability. If you're on it, you can do it. Yeah.
But they're driving the bus during that time.
I didn't know what you
can't turn them off.
Okay, these are the frequencies. So, tower, 127.5, ground, 20.5. Kind of easy to remember. And remember, when the tower's not operational, it goes back to CTAC, 22975. The AWAS has not changed, so that's going to stay the same. Clearance delivery has not changed, and departure, usually 126.1.
I'm sure you've thought of this, but for folks who aren't here and don't read notice and aren't paying attention, somebody monitoring 22975
we're going to ask them to change over, yes.
What was the question?
If someone were to inadvertently approach the airport on CTAF, we would ask them to change over to tower frequency.
What if they're on the ground and they're on CTAF and again, same thing?
Same thing, we'll switch them.
But what if they're still the same thing like normally, you just typically lock yourself, same thing until you're about to take off?
We would have an issue with that.
Violators will be arrested.
Now that we have the markings on the ground, we do expect compliance.
Yes.
We've had a few guys come in with no radio at all. How do you deal with that?
Well, we do have, in the provisions of our FAR 191-126, it says if you're in visual sighting of the tower, you could get a light gun signal and you could come in and land. You may have other issues with the den if you're coming in without a radio.
If you're coming into the area VFR with flight following, they're going to hand you directly to the tower, or they're going to...
Right. There's no handoff. They're going to tell us you're coming in, and we'll know what direction you're coming in from. But a handoff from facility to facility, we don't have the capability for. You know, the automated handoff.
I mean, are they going to flight following, going to tell us contact Leesburg Tower?
And we're going to know you're coming in. Yes, sir.
Do you guys have a phone number, we can call you to, or no radio operation?
Yes, we do. And we got it today, and I don't know that I remember it.
Will that be published?
I mean, that's fine with us. We have nothing to hide. Come out and talk to us if you want.
Do you want to hear them say, call the tower?
I just forget what it is, the number. Yeah.
Well, if you have a comp failure, you know, you want to bring your airplane to your
Right.
Yeah.
But actually, the den is going to have to, the NCRCC is going to have to approve that.
Right.
But we could help you with it. Yeah.
Still a zipper. You
Yeah.
can't operate a zipper without a radio.
Okay, NOTAMs. The NOTAM will be published on the 3rd.
Third?
Yep, and there are copies back here of what it should look like in final form. The other document that I produced is the flight advisory that was put out to describe what the Leesburg Airport Traffic Area is going to mean and what constitutes that. But these are the formal hours, and they're going to reissue the NOTAM that describes our maneuvering area, the LMA, so that we'll incorporate descriptions of what this is all about for the period that it's going to be in operation. Okay, so watch for NOTAMs. Please tell your friends to read NOTAMs. NOTAMs are good. Okay, pattern work. Pattern work still requires a discrete code, a separate SFRA flight plan. None of that has changed. The part that does change is you're now talking to your new friends in the tower all the time.
Right.
All the time. So
Yes.
you're doing pattern work, you're going to get some good radio communications practice. So when you're done with the operation, tower will cancel that with the den people, right?
We're not making this phone call. We won't make, that's not, no, they're still going to have to make a phone call to notify Potomac Den, located in Den Hill, that you're down.
Even if the tower's in operation.
Yes.
Okay.
That's wrong.
All right,
Yeah, I don't think so. We will, if we can help out with it, but I don't know that we can do every one. It just depends on the volume of traffic that we're working at the time.
So how do we know?
Well, it's the same as it is now.
We need to get
Just the
solid on
same.
this right now. No procedure change for traffic pattern work. You must make the phone call.
Make the phone call.
Okay?
When in doubt,
Don't-
make the call.
yeah, no, John.
Yes, make-
No, John. Been down this road before. Pattern work, no change. For those 30 days, you have to make the phone call. I do not want to get into this fight again between those two organizations, okay? Make the phone call.
Yeah.
Just follow the same procedure you do before. There's too much chance in here that somebody's going to get their, never mind. I'll be quiet.
Change that bullet for your Saturday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very well.
We will. Okay. IFR procedures.
IFR are, as they are today, you'll work with Potomac. They'll establish you on the approach that you want. somewhere between 5 miles and 15 miles, that's currently just two numbers based on their workload. They'll switch you to the tower. And from that point, you'll receive the instruction, your landing instruction, what traffic might be out there, if they're going to turn in front of you, if they're going to turn behind you. Yes, we will.
Exactly back on the previous one, but from my understanding, it's different people go for the local county work and file a flight plan.
Yes.
If the tower's in operation, do you still have to file a flight plan?
Yes.
Yes. And it'll be normal processing where it will be produced at Potomac Tracon. It's just, once it prints, they'll call us and tell us you're going out in the pattern, we'll have the code.
And Sean had mentioned before, any jet drivers here, jets are soon to be ready to depart when you finish your taxi and you're down at the departure end.
Yeah, if it's going to be something other than that, let us know. We won't work on your release. But typically, as you start to enter the taxiway here, we're calling Potomac to get your release.
So I assume that means for piston aircraft, you're going to assume the guys are going to do one-on-one.
Yes, correct. Correct.
And the other piece I'll add to that is, okay, for piston aircraft or prop aircraft, please don't block the entrance to the runway if you're going to wait for your release, because the jet's assumed to be ready to go, and he's going to need to bug out of there. So please stay back in the run-up areas. We want the jets out of here quickly so we can do our thing. Anything else?
No, I'm good here.
Okay, just some links on where to find more info. If you haven't seen the latest incarnation of the website, the FAA website that covers NOTAMs, they've done a really nice job of beefing that up and modernizing that. You could Google FAA NOTAMs and it takes you to the new site. The advisory should be out there. There's also something, has anyone heard of the letters to airmen?
Yeah.
I mentioned that back in a seminar about 3 years ago. They're very informative pieces of information that show up on the NOTAM site. So for instance, if you want to know how to expedite your IFR release here at Leesburg, you read the letter to airmen and it talks about VFR air pickup. So look for that when you go to check your NOTAMs out. And we should have a letter to airmen about this airport traffic area once that's published and brought up. So take a look for that.
Another question about the IFR release for piston aircraft. So when we're ready for release, do you want us to call you from the run-up area to keep it open, or taxi up and call?
From the run-up area is best, especially if you're going south. Typically, as you know, 35 departures are not as much of an issue for Potomac, but if you're going south, if you'll wait, you give us a heads up, say, I'm ready, we'll work on your clearance, we'll call them straight. Like I said, we got a direct line to them. We should have your release right back.
In that situation, if you call you from the run-up, you get the release, someone goes out there.
Well, the one thing that could happen there, if the other guy's faster than you are, he probably will go out in front of you.
Will you control that?
Yes. Not coming out.
If you're getting a clearance and somebody's coming up,
Yeah, if one's coming down and one's in the box, yes, we're going to control that.
the one who's cleared, well, you're told the one on the way to stop, let the one who's cleared get out.
Right. Well, local control will be talking to both of those aircraft, so they'll both be on the same frequency, hearing each other and hearing the local controller.
As part of the evaluation, did you get feedback from the users for the portal?
I don't know. Portal?
A portal to the users to feedback as to what we're seeing.
One doesn't exist right now. That's not a bad idea, though. Yep. They did that in Sweden, actually, because they would alternate between the remote tower and the physical tower and never tell the airport or the pilots who was controlling traffic. And then they would get feedback later to see, hey, is there any noticeable difference? That's a good idea. It probably applies more to the spring activity than it does now.
We can put up just an email form or something on our
Yeah.
website where you can submit comments or even questions that might be forwarded to Sean and his team.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
That would be the airport website.
A couple questions. So, you know, for a 30-day window, it's going to be a trial period. Is that what I understand?
Correct.
And that's going to be
October 11th till November 10th.
Okay, and so during that period, FAA certificate action is enforced.
You mean towards the controller or towards the activity of the pilot?
Towards the airman.
The airman, yes. If you come onto the taxiway without calling anyone. Yes.
But that's within the confines of the gentleman's license. Might not be enforcement, because it's one of the.
Yeah.
I might have missed it when I came in a couple minutes late. Are the personnel working in the remote tower, how do they compare to FAA
Well,
controllers?
the remote tower, we have one RVA gentleman who's got a ton of years, just retired from RVA. All the other three in the tower have 30-plus years, national, Potomac, large facilities. In the mobile tower, I have two guys that are same high, Dulles Tower, Potomac, National Tower, and one gentleman just separated from the military, Eglin, which is a pretty significant volume base. So we've got total out in the tower, we're over 100 years of experience, 115 probably. And in the remote tower, they're probably pushing 130 years.
But they're not FAA employees anymore?
No, we're all retired from the FAA.
Okay.
Now the tower, the gentlemen out here in the mobile tower are getting CTOs. We're in the process now of training up. We've had our training plan reviewed by the FAA. They like it, they support it. It's more than they normally see for a contract tower, if you will. So we're going through that process right now. Dulles Tower will supply an examiner, and they'll come over, check all our documentation, and then watch the controller on position, and we'll either issue a CTO or not issue a CTO. But they will have temporary CTOs to work that tower.
Maybe you could speak a little bit about RVA Robinson Aviation and what your company does.
Well, Robinson does a lot of things with aviation. They do run towers, and they run predominantly south and to the west is where most of the towers are. They are in the process now of soliciting maintenance of navigating systems and the different things. It's a fairly large organization. They have, is it over 100 towers?
It's nearly 100.
Nearly 100 towers.
100 at certain points. You might notice that in this particular area, Midwest Aviation took over a lot of the VFR tower facilities in the contract tower program because the government didn't want a monopoly for one company to be running all of them. So Robinson Aviation basically works up in North Carolina, large number in Florida, all the way across to Texas. And then after you get out west, Circa is another air traffic service provider that is in the federal contract tower program. So as Sean was saying, that there's just an enormous amount of experience, prior FAA controllers, prior military controllers in the system. And then they are hired by the companies and staff these particular facilities. So the Robinson Aviation controllers are really excited about the opportunity to be involved with the project here. And I think we'll provide you a really good job.
Now, Mark has worked with Robinson for a number of years, and he got the luxury of retiring for about 6 months before they asked him to come back and help with this project. He's going to perform a function as an evaluator of the R tower controllers. So they'll be doing what we're doing, but they won't get all the information. They won't hear everything that we hear. They'll get enough to make a determination. Yes, sir.
Can you put the picture back up that shows the overlay of the 4-mile ring on top? That look, there you go, right there. Today is, if I'm flying VFR, I'm very careful and responsible for ensuring that I don't stray outside of the Leesburg maneuvering area. That's my responsibility. Now I'm going to be under the control of the tower, right?
No, as you're coming back, as you're leaving the airport, we're going to give you the instruction to keep you into the LMA.
Right.
And as you come back through the LMA, you're going to call us. And that's when we're going to start issuing, we may ask you to report 2 miles from the airport.
Right. Perfect. So let me ask my question, which is, if you tell me to, say, extend my downwind, and I'm in fear now that I'm gonna be exiting the Leesburg maneuvering area, do I violate you or do I violate the Leesburg maneuvering area? Because they're not the same thing.
If we put you in a situation where you violated airspace, that's us. If you see something out there, you should tell us, I can't do this.
So say unable.
Say unable.
Okay.
And we'll go to plan B. But we're not going to stick you in an unsafe situation. We're not going to stick you outside of the airspace.
I'm not worried about safety, I'm worried about violating the Leesburg maneuvering area, since it's
No.
not the same as the tower.
No, the 4-mile ring only identifies your responsibility to contact the tower.
Okay.
You know, you still have the requirements of coming in and out of the LMA.
If you're still doing your proper transponder work and you're observing the LMA boundaries, there's no change.
Well, unless he tells me to extend downwind or something.
Well, you'll be in close to the airport.
Perilously close to the edge, I have to be careful.
Right, and we're aware of that, you know, because most of the controllers that are here today work the Shenandoah area of Potomac, which is Dulles. So we're very
And
familiar.
they know the boundary.
Right, with
down here.
with Leesburg, and it's,
Right, but you don't have radar, you don't have ADSB, you don't know exactly where I am.
well, what we can do, and it may happen, is that during a slow time at Dulles, we can ask to just run you out. Hey, tell us when you're a mile from the end of the runway. Tell us when you're 2 miles from the end of the runway. And let us get some visual points that we can work with. We can do a lot of different things with communicating with the other facilities. It's not just us against them. Everybody is
You answered my question, which is I'll say unable.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stray outside the element.
won't be the first time we've heard it.
Regardless of where I go, and I've been flying for 60 years, it's been a rule for me. I always call a minimum of 10 miles from any airport that I'm going into, whether it's controlled or uncontrolled. 10 miles out is my limit. And that won't bother you if I do that, because you know that I'm coming.
Yeah, and we're just going to ask you for a closer end point,
Right.
and then at that point, we're going to tell you where you fit.
Now, before I see the most likelihood of confusion is that the half-hour period centered on the startup and shutdown of the tower, and maneuvering at those times.
Right. We do have that in our agreement with Potomac, that once we open up, you would have been given a hold for release anyway before we open up from Potomac. So that would still be in place. They will tell us that you've received your clearance and transfer the information to us, so that when you call again saying you're ready to go, we'll be ready to accept that. And we make the same transmission at the end of the evening.
I'm talking about VFR, not
VFR, we're going to make the you still have to get a code out of Potomac. Well, there's 1226, I see what you're saying, 1226, you're going to go, but still, if you're on the airport when we open up and you haven't gone yet, you're going to have to call ground to get moving.
We're going to go to paddle work when we switch over. How are we going to know?
We're going to make a transmission that we're open.
Why is it down?
We'll see you out there. We'll make a transmission on CTAP at the same time we're transmitting on all the frequencies to let you know we're open. So we should be able to capture it. Yes, sir.
It can't be changed every day, but it will have a reminder of the hours of operation. It'll have a reminder of the time and dates of the, but unfortunately, our AWOS is not in a place where they can say hours active or have an actual date.
Can I answer a question? A lot of concern here. I can hear some grumbling. The requirement for the tower to monitor 122.975 was something we put on them. Okay, that was not part of the original plan. The town and the airport manager required that. We went to them and we said, look, we can see this coming. So if you don't have a plan to monitor CTAF, talk on it, remind people, coach them, yell at them, then we don't want to go down there. That's their job. They understand that. We've talked about it, okay? If you start taxiing and they see you, they're not going to get the form out. They're going to pick up the microphone first, okay? So just, that's all part of the plan. We got that. We understood that. Excellent question about the AWAS. Unfortunately, the ancient piece of equipment that we have requires somebody to go out in the rain, to go out and do it. So changing it 4 times a day isn't going to work. So we're definitely going to change the message, and it'll say it up there. If that's not enough to tell people, plus the NOTAMs, plus the outreach, plus the meetings, plus the Facebook postings, think about this time we've run out of options.
A quick question. You guys have a tower out here, but you have eyes like on the computer screens upstairs, so you can see visibility out, 4 miles here. But what's your visibility down to the tower below here?
Right now we have a 5-mile marker, so we're doing okay with that. We have a 4-mile marker, we have a 2-mile marker, and we believe we're going to pick up a 3-mile out on the ridge up to the northwest.
Here's another question. Like I'm coming in IFR and, for some odd reason you're flying in and all of a sudden, this tower, this loses the tower altogether. Or, technology happens, things break. I didn't get clearance to land yet. What do I do?
Well, we're having a document signed. We had to wait till we got our phone line, and since we got that today, we could provide that to Potomac. We'll have the document probably tomorrow. It talks about ATC 0 if we were to be completely gone. But if it's just a local power issue, we have a generator, and we're able to continue on that until we run out of fuel.
But if there's no communication from the tower at all, like if things are completely lost, generator fails. I'm on the way to worst case scenario.
We have a light gun. We have a light gun.
Yeah.
We'll issue a light signal for you to land,
Yeah.
and that's the best we can do under those circumstances.
I haven't either. Dennis, why don't you give everybody your thoughts?
Available somewhere, the one that you're picking now, is there a website where it is available?
Put on the,
Email blast to the, well, I don't need that, email.
no, I created that, so we could maybe populate that onto the town website, the airport website.
Yes, sir.
So to be blunt, I don't really like that, I'm be talking to you guys, but then I also have to file a central appointment. Is there a discussion with whoever the transportation security agency to eventually down the road eliminate that so that if we are talking to you, we can do pattern work?
Yeah, I can't talk to that right now.
I can answer that for you. Yes, there was a discussion. No, the rules won't change.
I'm sorry, say again?
Yes, there was a discussion. No, the rules won't change. Next year, when we go into a more permanent situation, a longer test, maybe.
This is the
There's too many
30-day
people
deal
that-
for now.
No, I'm not, and that's my question, down the road.
Maybe is the best I can do for you.
Right, and then, of course, down the road, you may be looking at actual Class D airspace.
Yeah. When we get a permanent tower, oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Then all the rules change. But this is just a test, and as it's just a test, the TSA is not willing to come off of their requirements.
So when we go to IOC in December 2017, is that still an estimate or is it low power?
Yet to be determined.
In summer of 17, we're planning, SAAB is hoping to do a longer, like 3 to 4 month period of testing, actually using the remote tower, but that's not the end. That's still a defined period.
In that time period, will the tower out there on the ramp still be there, or will it just be?
Yes, it'll be there as a safety backup to the remote tower.
But eventually that'll be gone.
Yes.
No, we don't. Potomac has to handle special VFRs because we're not assigned airspace.
Good question.
So the one that's operating in Sweden, how much more traffic is this going to be?
About an order of magnitude more here.
How much more?
This is probably 10 times the traffic they have in the airport in Sweden. At the end of the day, it boils down to how much traffic can a controller or two controllers handle in any tower. So we believe, because we haven't increased the workload of the controllers, that if two controllers, let's say RVA routinely does, you do airports with two controllers with 100,000 ops a year, right?
Yeah, we got numerous towers, especially in Florida and Texas, that do over 150,000 operations annually. There'll be days when you don't see anything similar to what you saw today. Then you're going to have days like y'all have on Saturdays that you might see 100 operations in an hour. We're combining your testing those corporate activities, and in some cases there is actually commercial air service. So the controllers are really the ones that will be tested as far as how much traffic we can handle safely. And so that'll be based on experience and technique and so forth. But in this case here, it's always going to boil down to safety. And we're always going to watch out for you. A lot of the questions I've noticed have been concerns about, well, we're changing. The one thing that Scott really was interested in is having the smallest footprint initially during this test as we could. And so that's been very important. We've had 4 or 5 questions about why we're doing it the same way we're always doing it. It's because we're only going to be here for 30 days initially. As Sean had mentioned, if this goes full-time op, there was a question about the AWOS. Well, then the controllers would be what they call bar certified. So then you would have weather observers upstairs that could augment that AWOS. And then, therefore, you'd have more real-time information. The airspace situation would obviously change. So as this continues to progress, you will see more interaction between what y'all would observe in a regular controlled environment than what you would see in this testing environment.
And back to your question, that is part of the testing the FAA is putting us through is, hey, this is more traffic here. It's a different environment. That's why we're going through this crawl, walk, run testing with the FAA. They're not basically saying, hey, because it's working in Sweden with 10,000 operations a year, that doesn't mean you can just plug it in and turn it on here. That's why we're going through this somewhat painful process. Yeah, during the testing we're starting now, and then what we'll be doing again in the spring, involves segments with targets of opportunity. We'll be doing a lot of testing on weekends when there's a lot more traffic, and that is the point of doing testing throughout the year at different times of day, is to see how the controllers interact with the system during peak traffic times.
I assume it'll be Leesburg Tower and Leesburg Ground.
Yes.
That's your call?
Yes.
Have you established any preferred reporting points yet out to the west, like the Knox or Purcellville or anything like that?
Whatever you're normally doing now is going to be fine with us. We're going to be more concerned as you approach, say, 2 miles, getting ready to be on downwind, or 3 miles, somewhere in that range is where we're more concentrated.
What changes are they expecting? More traffic, less traffic, more confusion?
I think there's always going to be confusion when you add something, so we're hoping that we can catch that before it becomes a problem. I don't see us adding any traffic or subtracting any traffic. Hopefully we make it more efficient. We get you on your way quicker. That's our goal, and in a safe manner.
Well, without controls, we can actually handle several aircraft on runways simultaneously right now.
Yes, we can.
It is efficient, isn't it?
So the efficiency will go down a little bit.
We will.
Maybe for those VFR opportunities, but we sure think we can make the IFR ones a little quicker.
Self-serve.
Just put 5 or 6 in everybody's airplane.
If the tests go as planned and it's successful, are we talking years before we get a permanent remote power? How long are we talking?
This is an airport commission question.
So first off, thanks everybody for coming tonight, and thank you for being guinea pigs in this experiment. We know we signed you guys up to be lab rats, and we really appreciate it. Secondly, I want to encourage everybody, starting October 11th, fly as much as you can. I'm serious. I want you to fly as much as you can. We really want to show this system's off. We have been desperately in need of a tower, despite several of my friends' comments to the contrary. 95%, 98% of the people know we've needed a tower here for about a year or two, maybe 3. We really need one. Problem right now is the FAA put a moratorium on new towers about 4 years ago. Frederick was one of the last ones built. They got in a couple of years ahead of the moratorium. So our plan right now, and I've said this publicly in front of Matt several times, possession being 99% of the law, forget that 9/10 crap, 99% of the law, his stuff is in our building and we have keys. So anymore. Now I just got to figure out how to put some controllers in it, okay? So first step, we run this test, safety panel this winter. Hopefully we go to a test next spring. We're pretty sure we're going to get to that, I think. I'm pretty confident in that. And then once we get that, we got to go through the point where, anybody here ever tried a TSO or radio? We have to go through that process of then certifying it, saying it's safe to operate. The equipment's already here. We're ready to operate it. Now we have to get accepted into the contract tower program. The contract tower program manager's actually been in here and seen the stuff, and they kind of sort of are expecting us. So do I get a 2017 operational tower, or 2018, or 19? I don't want to go much farther than that. I don't know, because it's got to get paid for. And somebody raised a good question, if we had to do brick and mortar, would we do it? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I think Frederick was north of $8 million by the time. 6? Including infrastructure?
And the FAA only paid, I think, up to $1.5 million eligible.
Right. And the little old town of Leesburg is not going to come up with $5 million. Not going to happen. And they need about $600,000 to $700,000 a year to keep something running. You need that same $600,000 or $700,000. We've got to figure out who's going to pay for that. So we're going to Uncle Sam to pay for the controllers. Once this thing gets certified, if the Airport Commission has been pushing this now for a couple of years, it is our #1 priority to get that funded. So as soon as the FAA signs off on it, we put controllers upstairs, and then we figure out where it's going next. We kind of like to have our conference room back, but that's okay. I'll live without the conference room if it makes the airport safer. We started fielding requests 4, 5, 6 years ago for VFR traffic conflicts and faster IFR departures, and by the faster IFR inputs, because the fact that people would land and forget to call and cancel their, tell them, call Potomac to tell them they're down. So you heard a lot of the no procedures are changing. That was specifically our request. No input, no impact on you guys. Do all the same things except when you see the striped line with the dashes, make sure you call somebody before you cross that line. Other than that, it's just like operating a regular tower. We'll get it paid for as soon as we can and try to get it implemented as soon as we can. Once it's permanent, and I'll tell you what, the TSA folks and the guys in the NCRCC, they love it because they're going to have a phone line to these guys. It's going to actually reduce some confusion in airspace violations. Because right now, if you violate the airspace, you cut the corner on the north side, they call here. Somebody at that desk looks out and sees 1,400 foot of runway, whichever end number they see first. And there are 2 people in this room who know exactly what I'm talking about because I've seen you guys tonight. And you had to answer that question and prove to them, no, that couldn't have been you. Because they see the first one, they say, well, that's the airplane I'm looking at. I don't know if it's not them, if that's them. Whereas the tower is going to that's going to reduce some confusion. So I think it's going to improve a lot of things. But we got to get it paid for. And it's about coming up with that money to pay these high-priced controllers.
Is the town of Leesburg paying for that, Dennis?
No, so what the deal we made with the town, and you need to be really, really nice to this guy right here. Afterwards, come up and shake his hand, okay? So this is a joint operation between the Virginia Department of Aviation, their SAAB lab, and SAAB Census. And SAAB is footing a huge portion of the bill. They brought the equipment, they're paying for a lot of the stuff. We're paying for the electricity. Actually, no, you are. You're paying for the electricity. We made you pay for it.
We're suckers.
Well, you came back for an extension, man. Come on. We're not paying for a whole lot of anything, and that's pretty much former mayors would know. We didn't have to go to town council for money. We went in and we said, look, we got to pay for the electricity the first year. We knocked that bill down. Scott spends a lot of time working on this. We ponied up the space, and we do a little around here and there. But SAAB is paying for the majority of this, and clearly it's a business opportunity for them. That's why they're doing it, and we're happy to provide the space because we think this is our fastest route to a permanent tower. We heard some very, very ugly stories from the FAA about when we asked about a contract tower, and they said, huh? I'm sorry, we don't do those anymore. And there are apparently 32 airports ahead of us on the waiting list for contract tower. That's a waiting list that doesn't exist, and there's more time in applications, but somehow there's 32 ahead of us. We must have been on double secret probation last year. I don't know what happened. So that's where we're at. The Airport Commission's #1 priority is to get this done. Any other questions of me? I'm going to shut up. And thank you, and we really appreciate you guys doing this for us. I know as soon as I get back off vacation, week after next, I'm going to be flying every day.
Dennis, one last question on funding.
Sure.
When and if we do become permanent, will some of that financial burden fall on the town at that point?
I hope not. The FAA funds all of the operational costs of the contract tower. They fund it. And that has really been the problem with why they are not taking any more applications, because there are towns, cities, counties, airport sponsors with towers, mostly federal towers. They just don't need a tower anymore. Things ebb and flow. And there are towns in Pennsylvania that have 20 based aircraft and 10,000 operations a year. They still have a fully staffed federal tower. And we're going to go, hey, but you know what happens, politics gets into it. And we're not going to shut the tower down. We're losing jobs. And it takes, what's the minimum staffing for a federal tower? I think it's 7 people, right? You have to have 7 full-time.
For vacation time, sick time.
Right. So for 3 people on staff, takes 7 minutes, it's like staffing a help desk. You have to have 7 people to get started. So we would hope that the FAA would pay off all of that. There was a question over there.
So if this is successful, we get a tower, and there's already been a master plan for more towers, will we use some of that money and get some more hangers?
Wow.
Does
Okay.
SAAB do hangars?
So the answer is no. There never was any money for the tower anyway. That was never really in there. 2, we are Scott and I have been working with the commission for the last 6 months, and the town staff is knee-deep in how to finance the next purchases. And we do have more hangars planned on the north end. There's some other things we have to buy before that. Feel free to come to the commission meeting next week. You'll hear all about it, if you, that much.
Any discussion of user fees for this?
I'm sorry. What did you say? You said something in a language I don't understand. The only reason you implement user fees is to restrict traffic. That's true. The airport managers will tell you they teach this at AAAE conferences. The only reason you put in a user fee at an airport or a landing fee is just to keep people out of there. City of Bridgeport, Connecticut hasn't figured that out yet. Keep paying that fee. But it's just to try and keep people down because you've got too many airports. And we're not at that stage yet. We get up pretty quick.
Any final questions? Well, we want to thank you all for coming. Tell your friends, we're going to repeat this session on Saturday morning, 9 a.m., same place. And if you need to sign in for your wings credit, do so on your way out. Thank you all very much.
So you recorded the whole thing?
See if I did. I'm not sure. I never know what's happening here.